the whole thing with the Oregon accumulation and weather manipulation and all this stuff, like growing up in Florida, it was very interesting for me because, you get hardened by hurricanes. Like hurricanes weren't a bad thing to all of us native Floridians. Like with Katrina, do you remember the trek that Katrina took in '04? I think it was '04 or '05. I always forget. Do you
Hey,
remember where it started
No, no,
and
but
how it went?
I'm all about like staring hurricanes at this point.
So
it came from the
this
east,
is
right?
like this. Well, it came from the West first. So I
Oh,
was
it looks
working with
back.
a
Okay, okay, interesting.
I was working with a Honduran guy. Yeah, he was from Honduras, and I remember he was all worried one day, and he's like, "Yeah, there's this storm that's sitting over my homeland, and it created a landslide that killed like 50,000 people." I was like, "No way!" And that was like the start of Katrina. And then it went north, and then it hooked towards Florida. It went through the lower Gulf of Mexico.
So it did come from the east, though,
It
right?
Well, listen, I'm going there. So it started west. Went through Florida. It went through Naples and then Palm Beach County. Went over my house in Palm Beach County. I just bought it. And like a month or two later, well, actually 3 months later, Katrina comes and rolls over us. Goes out to Bermuda, hits Bermuda, makes a 180-degree turn,
What?
goes goes back through Broward County in Florida City, the west part. I always forget what's parallel to Broward County in southern Florida on the other side of the state. Goes back into the Gulf of Mexico, goes all the way to the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, and then makes a 90-degree turn and heads due north for New Orleans.
That's fascinating because I'm not seeing that hook in any of the paths here. They must have.
It's all been wiped. I watched it from like the time it was over Honduras.
Fascinating.
It
Holy
was
shit.
it came from the west, went over us, and then back over us.
Like somebody's using a joystick just to be like,
I think they were just perfecting their steering. I think they perfected it. It was nuts. Like it was so crazy.
So
And
okay,
that
so
hurt.
how much better do you think they are at it now from when they threw
Well,
Katrina at us
I mean,
for them?
think about it. In the '40s, if they could control it with a little bit of these storms with $5 worth of carbon black dust, now the fact that our like when you look up into the sky now, it always has this white haze. You guys notice that?
In LA,
Okay,
yes,
but
not necessarily where I am now, but yeah, in LA for sure.
Well, even where you're in North Carolina, I have family in North Carolina. Last time I was out there, you'll see it. The sky, even like right now, we have no clouds in the sky. It's a blue sky, but there is a white layer that you're looking through. It's not dark blue skies anymore. Like even like I don't trust NASA, but even sometimes they say some true stuff. They said that there's an albedo effect to our atmosphere now. And they'll blame it on these pollutants, right? The majority of these pollutants that are in our atmosphere make the atmosphere is a fluid. So people, when they think of air, they don't think of it as a fluid. But everything that's above you is a fluid. That fluid, when it has particulates that are suspended in it, that's known as a colloid. A colloid is technically defined as a fluid that has suspended particles in it. Well, if you have a great, positive potential up there and you have a negatively charged particle, it's going to lift. That's what happens. So we're all looking through this whiteness now. It's albedo, it's a reflector. Well, the reason why I bring this up relative to weather modification is that whiteness that we see is ionizable. It's literally full of metal particulates. It's full of all these things that react to electromagnetics. And because some of these are metal salts, these metal salts will adjoin to water particulates. Well, guess what? When you have a bunch of these water particulates that are adjoined to these metal salts that are in the air, and let's say they go over a very high powered transmitter, they lens. I don't know if you guys have these where you live, but back in the day when you used to buy like Dish TV or Direct TV, what did they have? They had a parabolic dish
Yeah.
that would catch the signal.
Yeah, we had one of the huge ones, one of the old school massive ones.
Ooh.
Well, out here in the Midwest where I am now, like literally, like I can tell when the 5G signal is really being transmitted strongly because you'll see the parabolic dish. You'll see in the clouds, you'll see the muddying in a parabolic shape over their transmitters.
Wow.
Oh my
It-
God.
it's something I didn't really realize what I was seeing until I talked to Jim. Because Jim is right. He's like, for them to control the weather, they would have to be able to control pressure gradients. Well, pressure gradients to me, all pressure gradient is temperature differential. Well, from forever, what do people use to like do solar cooking? It's called a Fresnel lens. It's a big magnifying lens.
Yeah.
And so if you create a parabolic dish over something that's semi-transparent and the sun goes through it, it focuses that light to a point to give you thermal heat. Well, guess what? Have you guys ever stuck your arm through water? Like, have you ever like stuck your hand into a pool and watched your arm grow in size?
Ah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, I just said the atmosphere is a fluid. That's water above us. If all that water starts to lens in specific areas, there's your temperature gradient. There is your pressure differential. That's how you steer the weather.
Oh my God.
And you can do it with very low voltage. It's not something that you need cajillions and cajillions and cajillions of watts to do. I think that model is completely false because how can I, as a doofus, with something that looks like a Gatling gun, disperse clouds? How is that possible? I'm not using any ampage. So there's this haze that is emitted by everybody's up there, even if it is just pollution. That pollution creates something that's called you've had Sophia Small Storm on your podcast. It creates something called condensation nuclei. A lot of these condensates are a metal salt. If it's a metal salt, it's ionizable. That means if it goes over something that has a certain field strength, it will bend. It will actually morph the water vapor above it. Anybody that has a microwave knows that what microwaves do to water. Like a lot of these signals that are sent are in the microwave band length. There's a lot more. But my question to you is always like, why was it imperative that the US government switch us away from FM and AM radio to digitize it? Why would they do that? Because FM, AM can travel through the earth. AM, if you want to send a signal a really long way and not have any interference with it, it propagates much better than a microwave because it's amplitude modulation. FM is a little bit faster. It's not as sturdy or robust as AM, but it does better.
What is the difference between them?
So it's the wavelength.
They go
So-
it goes up, down. Yeah.
So like right now with a 5G phone, you receive your signal mostly. What makes it a 5G phone is it's receiving a very small wave. It's receiving, it's a millimeter wave. An AM wave, I think, is 1,000 feet. So take 1 millimeter relative to 1,000 feet. You had Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was the first AM broadcaster. Nikola Tesla wanted to send all the information through the ground in very long pulsed waves. He was like, that's the way you do it because you won't lose any of your signal strength. Sending stuff through the air at a very short distance is like, why would they choose to do something that would fail?
Yeah, millimeter wave is famously, I mean, the demonstrations of it works on city blocks at that scale and no greater scale, millimeter wave 5G for cell phones.
Guess why? It's so easy when you think about it because it has nothing to do about giving anything to the customer.
Of course, yeah.
It has everything to do with ionizing the sky.
It's like we're in this anti-business business era where nothing's about the customer.
It's not.
It's
It's
so
not.
crazy to me. It's so crazy to me. Why growing up, people bent over backwards to make sure the customer's happy. Now it's like, fuck you.
Yeah. Now the customer bends over forwards.
Yeah. And we
That's
just
really
take
good.
it. It's unbelievable.
Check it out. Like it was so obvious in 2019 when the banks went direct. Do you guys remember that right before they did Event 201, before the Gates Foundation did Event 201? The banks announced at the end of August 2019 that, hey, we're going direct. And I remember like reading that. And essentially what it was is the bank said, we're no longer tied to legislation because guess what? You guys owe us too much. Haha. The second that happened, money and the way big corporations work is no longer about making money. Because they're the banks that are actually lending them and doing all these transactions, they're not tied to any legislation. It
So the
becomes
banks
about
were
what
like, our government's so in debt that we're just not going to follow the rules anymore.
they literally said that to all the world's governments. There is no country that is immune to this. Maybe Switzerland is because they're all
Because it's the head of the
Bank of
snake.
the international settlements, and I don't know what their debt cycle is like, but like literally, you could take like all the 128 nations that participate in the Olympics. They're all beyond debt, and the banks are like, haha, you owe us so much money.
So crazy to me
You
that
don't,
we just put up with this shit, dude.
but we don't. That's not us. Like you and I have no say in that. That's why I decoupled from the system for so long ago. Like we don't do that. I will never say we. I've never agreed to that. That's a power and principality move. That's what I'm saying is like at the end of empire, you have to have enough wherewithal to know when you are. It's not just what you're doing and who you are. It's when are you? And the signs are all about it. Like you just said, if the money has if the customer is no longer right, if money really doesn't matter. I mean, you say it religiously on your podcast all the time that you know they have all the money. They're not doing this for the money. That's not why they're doing it.
Yeah.
So why are they doing it? They're setting the system up for power. And the best power ever is when you have a naive, like a completely naive public that is like thinking that things are one way and it's literally sleight of hand and things are really this way. Because they work on karma principles. They work on like, oh, you opted into this. You just got the new iPhone 16. Didn't you read the AI? Didn't you read the whole thing about AI and biometrics on there? Like you opted into it. Like we told you right there.
You're so right. You're so right, dude. Johnny's making all of us get fucking new iPhones. Thank you, Johnny.
What are you talking about? How am I making
Johnny?
You Nobody ever made you do anything. First of all, except
thank
your
you,
father,
Johnny.
maybe.
You ruined everything. I want to get in this. I want to get into because I would love to buy some land somewhere. There was a place Johnny found that we all should have jumped in on, which was Tennessee on a mountain with 3 houses. We should have all gone in on it and bought it right there. We should have.
Yeah.
It was perfect. It was high on the road. We could all sit there with our guns. Pew, 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 pew. Everybody
Nice.
coming at us.
Nice.